The whole focus of midlife mastery is to find ways to do midlife well as we hit our 50s and our 60s. And we're kind of in that space maybe between kids growing up and no longer perhaps chasing the career, but we're not yet ready for retirement, or maybe we have retired. I don't know. But there just seems to be this space in between. And it is such a great space. It's a rich space. It's a time in life where we well, there's an old expression, if only youth knew, if only age could. And that expression just kind of rings in my head all the time. And I find midlife to be kind of that sweet spot between, right? We've got both the wisdom of experience and yet are still in a position where we can. And so we're looking for ways to do that well. And a big part of that is creating change in our lives. And today's guest is Adrienne Shubin. And a little over 2 years ago, she began transforming her life. And you can find out a little bit more about it. She is the author of the Change Your Midlife blog. But she started going alcohol-free for 30 days. And then that sort of evolved into staying alcohol-free and then switching to a plant-based diet, getting rid of clutter, losing weight, and becoming debt-free. Now, each one of those is a pretty big goal in and of itself, and that she and her husband were able to do that in a really short period of time. I believe they got the bulk of that done within a year. Well, you'll be hearing about her journey, how the small steps led to big changes, how her friends and family were supportive of those changes, and maybe some of the ways that they weren't so supportive of those changes, as well as her tips for you for continuously evolving and creating positive change in midlife. And so this episode, Creating Audacious Change in Midlife with Adrienne Shubin, I'm just going to stop talking so you can start listening to it. And so if you're ready to play bigger, do better in our lives, well, let's get started. Adrienne, welcome to Midlife Mastery, and really, really excited to have you on today because you have been on a bit of a journey and over the past couple of years really transformed your life. In fact, you had mentioned in a recent post on Instagram that included becoming debt-free, switching over to a plant-based lifestyle, going more minimalist, getting rid of clutter, and also giving up alcohol. So, and along the way, you actually lost a significant amount of weight. And so, you managed to do in a fairly short period of time, multiple things that a lot of people just try to do individually, like lose weight or give up alcohol or get the finances in order. Take us back. So about 2 years ago, what kicked all that off?
Well, first of all, thank you, Brock, for having me. I'm excited to be on your podcast. So in January 2020, my husband and I went with about 14 other friends to Tahiti on a wonderful trip of a lifetime. And while I was there, I didn't know it until I got home, but I had gotten dengue fever, which is from mosquitoes. And this was on the heels of COVID coming. And, at that point in January 2020, none of us really knew what was going to happen. And when I got home, it was probably 36 hours later, I was at the point where I could barely get out of bed. I knew something was really wrong and, high fever and terrible body aches and the whole everything. And so I was in bed for about 11 days. And, I was a daily drinker. I live in wine country. I live in Sonoma Valley. I've worked at wineries. I used to blog about wineries, and I know a lot of winemakers, and it's just was part of my lifestyle. And I had wanted to do a dry January, but then this trip came along, so it didn't happen. So, quitting was in the back of my mind, or sometimes in the front of my mind. So when I got sick and I got better after about 11 days, I came out of it and I thought, you know what, my husband didn't have anything to drink. I said, let's just turn this into a dry January, even though it's the 17th of the 17th was when I got sick. And then the pandemic was really, it was happening and we were getting close to lockdowns. And I thought, I've got dengue in me. It stays in you, like you're stuck with it. But I don't have any problems now, but it does stay in your system. I said, I don't know how that would interact with whatever's coming. So I want to be as healthy as possible. So we did the 30 days and I felt so much better. It really wasn't even that hard. I mean, there were moments of stress when I almost caved in and had a vodka soda. I just wanted to take the edge off. And my husband's like, no, come on, we have an agreement. So we stuck with it. And then 30 days turned into 60 days, and 60 turned into 90. And then it was kind of like, well, we're just going to quit until the pandemic's over, because we knew rattling around in the house all day with nothing to do, our drinking would go up, and I knew that before it was out in the media that was going on. I just knew instinctively that's what I would be doing. And so we kept with it. And I noticed, something I'd always wanted to work on was my weight. So I started really trying. I started intermittent fasting, which I still do. We eat between noon or 1 and about 6 or 7 every day. And then started exercising more. And then I joined Noom eventually. I was able to lose some weight just not drinking and doing intermittent fasting. And then I joined Noom, and that really was just that completely clicked for me. I don't know if you know what Noom is exactly, but takes a psychological process, or whatever you want to call it, towards weight loss. So it's behavioral psychology behind why we do the things that we do and behave the way we do around food. And so that from that point on, I was just well on my way. And, you also count calories. So I learned a lot that way. And then I just kind of kept changing. I just realized that I wasn't stuck, that I had this ability that I didn't know I had. And it's like a muscle, and you start working it. It doesn't have to be just in one area. You can start attacking other things, I can be brave and bold, and I can get rid of my grandma's china or whatever, I can really be audacious. I can, even though most of my friends drink, I can quit, or most of my friends eat meat and cheese, but I don't have to. It's just, it's confidence. It's really not a muscle, it's confidence, but I kind of like to think of it as a muscle.
What was surprising to you about, and a couple of things I want to touch on. One is that kind of realizing you had that ability to change and how that flowed through your life. But before we get there, really curious. So what was surprising to you about giving up alcohol?
I didn't know that alcohol was causing anxiety. I didn't even know I had anxiety. I thought it was my personality. And also having this dim, negative view of the world, and of just, it's like veil was lifted kind of thing. And so I became a lot more hopeful. I mean, here we are in a pandemic. We have no idea what's coming down the pike, and to have be so positive and hopeful, and it's just kind of like, what is going on here? But clear-minded and more relaxed. And, not right away, but soon after quitting, my sleep really improved. There was just a lot of positive emotional and mental, waking up feeling like you want to just attack this day rather than trudging through it, and just having so much excitement about life again. And it was just a new feeling. I had quit drinking before, but it was really with this, I just want to get through this dry January thing. I'm going to white knuckle it until I get to the end. This was different. This was I want to see, I'm at this perfect storm of being too scared to drink because of health reasons, but also taking away what I was afraid of the most, which was losing my social life. I wasn't going to have a social life for a while because of COVID. So, why not just play with this and see what happens? Just keep going and see what reveals itself, and if it's right for me or not.
So when you say right for you, what kind of identity issues did you face, if any, in giving up the alcohol? Because you had mentioned, this is kind of a central part of your life, right? You've written about wine, live in wine country, and all that. So that goes deeper than just for the average person who maybe has a glass of wine with dinner. That was much more lifestyle. And so what did you find there in terms of just, I don't know, did it affect you? Did that force you to shift how you thought about yourself? Or
yeah, it was such a big part of my identity that I had done some blog stuff at a winery, really beautiful winery down the road. And a professional photographer came and took these photos of me in a vineyard with a glass of Cabernet. And then I had another photo of me sitting on a picnic table with a bottle of wine under a big oak tree. And I actually had those blown up, and it was kind of funny because when I ordered them, I didn't realize how huge they were. I thought they were 11 by 14. I don't know what I was thinking. And they're like these giant things. And so they were in our living room. And after a few months went by of not drinking, I was like, I just don't want to look at that anymore. I just really don't. This is not me. And then just, all our wine paraphernalia, and we have a nice wine refrigerator that we still have. We still have wine in the house for guests. We aren't tempted by it or anything, but I look at it more now as just, it's kind of like old me, new me. And I really I didn't want to be that person anymore. So those went bye-bye. And that was part of my huge declutter I did a year ago. So it's been difficult socially, but I don't know how to separate difficult because I don't drink and difficult because of the pandemic. Like, it's just, I don't see people generally that much anyway, except for, going out for walks. I don't do anything with anybody indoors, or, it's all just outdoor gatherings. And we travel, like I mentioned, we travel a lot in our RV. And so that plays a part too. But I still know, it's weird for my friends who I used to drink with to hang out with me.
So, and your husband's now, is he just a really good sport? Was he also kind of on the verge of just wanting to give up alcohol as well? And it just kind of came together?
Yeah, he was totally on board. That's one thing I'm so grateful for and feel so lucky and fortunate that I have, my number one person has wanted to do all of this stuff with me. And he's always been a minimalist. He's always wanted to be one. So he has no problem getting rid of stuff. He's always on board with that. He likes the plant-based as much as I do, and not drinking. I mean, he's retired. And I was like a stay-at-home stepmom / writer blogger, and I helped raise 3 kids. And when he retired a few years ago, we're on a fixed income. So we were spending a lot, here in wine country, it's not a big deal to go out and spend $100 on a bottle of wine in a restaurant. That's like Tuesday. So it's really helped us a lot financially, and to not have that habit.
One of the things I've noticed about not drinking is I don't think we have really good language around it, really good semantics around not drinking. All the language seems to either sound like, you're an alcoholic and now you've switched, like the word sober just doesn't resonate with me. It's accurate to say, I don't drink, I'm sober, whatever. Yeah. It just conjures up so many images that may not mesh with the reality. And I don't know. I just, one of the things I've noticed, and I don't know if you found this or even thought about it, just we don't really seem to just have good words or ways of describing not drinking.
Right.
And that almost feels like a barrier, perhaps, to those who want to give it up, because it becomes this huge thing versus just a small thing. And anyway, just kind of a side observation, I recently stopped drinking as well, and noticed many of the things that you've mentioned. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I say just kind of a side thought there that we just don't seem to have a good way to discuss it, really.
Mm-hmm. No, like alcohol free is what I went to in the beginning. Because I didn't like that word sober. I just thought it carries so many other assumptions with it. And then I started thinking, well, if I'm saying I'm alcohol free, does that mean I'm doing other things? Like I don't drink alcohol, but I'm whatever, doing cannabis or something else. I mean,
right.
It's like, but then so sober really is the appropriate word, because I don't do anything to check out. I don't do except maybe coffee. I mean, that's about it. But I mean, you're right. And that there isn't really a term to describe that. But I think the further along I've gotten in this, I'm okay with sober, because to me, it just means so much more than I used to drink and now I don't. It just means that like, I am so clear in in a lot of things. I mean, not every single thing, but I'm clear thinking. I'm clear in what I want out of my life. I'm clearer in my relationship with myself. Like that feels very, the haze on that is gone. And I have a lot more trust. I trust myself now, whereas before, not so much. So I think just dealing with problems, that's also you're sober. If you just let yourself experience the discomfort of dealing with a hard emotion or a problem. Whereas I didn't do that before. I would, just go drink wine and it would go away. And then it would come right back at 3 a.m.
There aren't really terms that convey positivity around it, at least, and sober just, it's a weighty word.
Yeah.
And makes you think of being super serious, sober as a judge, old expression. And there's also so many assumptions that people make depending on the terms you use. So for example, you mentioned being plant-based. I've been vegetarian for years and years, but I never described myself as vegetarian because people would come up with all kinds of weird thoughts about what that meant. It was just so much easier to say, well, I don't eat meat. And people got their heads wrapped around that without bringing all the baggage with it that
right.
just came from a simple word. Actually, speaking of, let's talk about so because not only did you go alcohol free, but you also went meat free, and that's another huge change. What inspired that, and what was your experience with that? I mean, that's a big change to diet.
Yeah, it's when I started doing Noom, one thing I learned about was calorie density in foods. So you take a grape and you take a raisin, and one little raisin's going to have, it's like the grape, but the grape's going to fill you up more. So eat 10 raisins, it's like big deal, but 10 grapes, it's not going to fill you up, but it's a decent amount of food. And I started exploring that more. And I just naturally, when I would fill in what I ate for the day on Noom, I would notice that like if I just lean towards fruits and vegetables and, steer clear of too much meat or too much dairy, I can stay on track with what I'm trying to do here. And so we started eating a lot more fruit and a lot more vegetables. And then my husband and I were in our RV trip. And he said, I ate so much red meat, and he really did. I did too, but he still loves salami, And we were eating steaks a lot and burgers. And he said, I don't know. I feel like I'm eating too much of that. For 30 days, let's just not eat meat, red meat, 4-legged, he said, no 4-legged animals. And that actually comes from Atomic Habits, which he and I both read last year. And there was a section in there where James Clear is trying to give an example of taking steps towards a goal. So he used an example of you want to go from being a carnivore to the vegan, do 30 days, no 4-legged. Then the next 30 days you do no 4-legged, no 2-legged, so no birds, and then fish and so on until you get there. And he read that and he's like, oh, we should try that. And I'm like, we're not going to be vegan. What are you talking about? And so we gave up the red meat, and neither one of us missed it. We started feeling better. But we were both kind of sick of chicken by that point. And my stepdaughter, who lives in Portland, she's been a vegan for a little over 4 years, and she loves it. And so we just decided to try it. And what I want to say about that is I always want to tell people this, that when you think, let's say you sit down one day and you're like, maybe I want to become vegan. Your brain likes to do this thing that says, you can't be vegan because you love cheese too much, and you can't be vegan because then you'll never, ever have bacon again. And you can't go vegan because what will your friends say? I mean, there just gives you like 100 reasons why you can't do something. And you also, your brain, at least this is my brain, I can't get in someone else's brain, but I also have these feelings of like, if I do it, if I start tomorrow, I have to do it for the rest of my life. I don't know why. It's kind of a mystery why our brains think that. So what I always say is I love the word try. Just try it on and see if it works in your life. Try it on and observe your life with this thing going on. So you might really like how clean your kitchen is, because you don't have grease everywhere, and you don't have to like put a hazmat suit on to cook chicken. And or you might really like how much food you can eat and not gain weight, or how all the nutrients you're getting, or whatever it is. But it can just do something for 30 days and see if you like it. I mean, I only talk about the things I've done for 30 days that have stuck. There are a lot of things I've done for 30 days that didn't. So, I would just like to try things on and see if it enhances my life or not.
Well, it's really interesting that there, Adrienne, that these huge sweeping changes you've made came out of short-term experiments.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I listed out kind of all that you've done over the past couple of years, and it's pretty massive life overhaul. But so it's really interesting thinking you didn't start off going, I'm going to overhaul my whole life. You went, well, let's try this for 30 days.
Yep. It's my number, 30. It's a lot of people's number. I always think when I'm about to approach something, I think about how people have endured so much more in life. And for me to give up, let's just say caffeine, I don't plan on giving up caffeine, but as an example, I know I'll have a week's worth of terrible headaches, and it'll be hard, and I'll miss that smell. And I miss the routine and the of having coffee with my husband every morning, and whatever, all those things. But I can do it for 30 days. If I had to, I can do it for 30 days. And you think of what all the people who have overcome so much more than giving up coffee for 30 days. I always try to put it in relationship to something truly difficult. And then it's like, I can do that. I could do it. I wouldn't love not having coffee, but I could do it. I wouldn't, it's like with alcohol, I risk social life and having, rip roaring, just good old fun time, and I do kind of miss that sometimes, but I'm having new experiences now. And it's not that I don't have fun. I just don't have that kind of fun, where you just no inhibitions kind of thing. Like my inhibitions are pretty, they're in place. They're alive and well. I think just knowing that you don't have to do all these things either. You just tell yourself, I'm just going to do it for 30 days. And then if I hate it and it doesn't work in my life, then maybe it's not for me, or maybe it's not for me right now.
That's
because
a nice distinction.
Just because you do a dry January with the intention of being sober for your life, that doesn't, I did 2 or 3 dry Januaries. I quit drinking for 2.5 months once because I had atrial fibrillation, and my doctor told me that my heart was inflamed and that I needed 3 months of not drinking to make it calm down. Now, if that wasn't a wake-up call, and it wasn't, that was when I was like 44. I just white knuckled it and then went right back. But it's okay that I tried before and it didn't work. It's just, it wasn't the right time for me. And, the things that I've tried that didn't take, that doesn't mean that I can't go back and try them again. And I'm constantly changing my view on myself and my environment and everything. It's just, that's what I like about being so clear-headed and not drinking, is that, I believe that I am always evolving.
Well, what's been your friends' reactions to this? Because as we mentioned, when we tell people we give up alcohol, there's a lot of baggage around that. And when you tell people you give up meat, people just don't know how to react. But they're trying to somehow relate one way or the other to the conversation, and they just don't know how. So for your friends, I mean, both of these are big lifestyle changes. What kind of, I assume they're all on board now, but what was kind of some of the initial responses?
Well, one of my favorite initial responses was a friend of mine invited me and Bill over. This is right before lockdown, so it was new. And she invited us over for dinner. And she had gone out of her way to buy some non-alcoholic hard alcohol in these very pretty bottles. And I know it was very expensive, and it kind of just tasted like water with some herbs in it, but I didn't tell her that. And she got a mocktail book, a very elegant one, and all of these ingredients. I mean, she really went to town, and we made probably 3 or 4 different beautiful mocktails. And I just thought, wow, it was just so touching. And I mean, to show her support like that. And that was really neat. So I haven't had too many unpleasant experiences, but not in person, but in over text. A few, like one person tried to get me to make an exception and drink with her, and then texted me a photo of the cocktail she was drinking at that moment. And when I said, I'm going to do this, and we had been in the middle of making plans to go to dinner. And when I said no to her trying to get me to drink, again, she just dropped the conversation cold. So it was like, I'm not going to go to dinner with you if you're not going to drink, basically is what she was saying without coming out and saying it. And then a couple other people have said, give me a call when you're drinking again, And I kind of get that as far as like dry January mentality of, you just get through those 31 days and then you're right back to it. So, that one, those don't hurt as much. The other one with the texting and the dropping the conversation, that was kind of hurtful. But yeah, my husband and I were joking because we became vegans on our RV trip. And then we got home, we were talking about like, we going to get together with our friends. And like, I don't know, honey, like we already had this, like, we don't drink and all you guys do. And now, at least we had food that we could, sit at a table and enjoy food together, and we'd drink our sparkling water and it would be no big deal. But now I got to add in, also we're vegan. And a lot of people don't know even what that means. I mean, I've had people say, do you eat eggs? Do you still eat cheese? And so it's they don't know what to do. And I understand that. I really do understand that. And I also understand the wanting to be around when you drink, not wanting to be around people who don't drink, or having not wanting to be around them, but having anxiety about it and awkwardness, because I've been there as a drinker. I've been on the other end of that.
Well, how has all of this kind of changed your own perception of yourself?
I went from being so full of shame, just like overwhelming and kind of desperate, and not knowing what to do about my weight and about feeling crappy all the time, and money and everything else that was going on, to just having a lot of confidence, not in a like pompous, like I'm so great, or I'm nothing like that. It's more of just like knowing myself and confidence that I can do things that previously would have been very, very difficult for me to do. So confidence in my ability and in my choices. And I have a lot more excitement about my future than I used to.
Oh, talk about that. Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
I don't know if you've seen it going around Instagram, but people are posting photos from January 2020. And it says, this is the last photo of me before, when we didn't know what was coming, it says. And so there's a photo of me with Bill, my husband, and we're on a boat in Tahiti. And it was probably the first week of January. And just thinking about everything that's happened, good. And I mean, that's not just good stuff. I mean, we're living in a pandemic. There's been some awful things, but if I kind of pivot and just think about what I was able to accomplish since, it's just, to me, it's just mind blowing. So I get really excited about the future of, like what's next. And I don't know the answer to that. And, I didn't plan to do any of this. I really didn't. I often think if I hadn't gotten dengue, I don't think this would have happened. I think I would have just kept on, because when I got home from the airport from Tahiti, I mean, I drank. I got home in the morning and I was drinking that night. So it wasn't until I got sick that I quit. So it's a lot more hopefulness, no shame in my game. And I want to tell other people. I want other people who are like me to know. And it doesn't have to be about drinking. It doesn't have to be about vegan. None of that. Just like you just said about like people telling you what they ate, like you don't care. Like I don't care what you eat. I don't. It's whatever makes you happy. If you want to know about it, and I'm happy to talk about it, but whatever your thing is that you want to change, I feel like I'm kind of finding my way of what works to facilitate change, to ignite it, and to build that change muscle so that you can work on other areas of your life.
Yeah. So it sounds like there was this real kind of cascade. You mentioned you experimented with one thing that kind of worked, experimented with others, and just kind of kept expanding along there. What are you enjoying most about midlife now? Midlife comes with, we've been talking about things that come with stigma and kind of baggage.
Yeah.
Midlife is definitely one of those things. So what is it that you really enjoy and appreciate about midlife?
That, I don't really care so much what people think. I know it's a common midlife thing. I mean, I care to an extent, but I don't care like I used to. And that what's happened, I think, and I'm sure it's happened to a lot of people in their 50s, is I finally got the memo that, I'm not going to live forever. And that, mortality is a real thing. And how many really great years do I have? I don't know. What am I going to do with them? And now, it has so much value to me. And I think that's just how we're built as humans, that we do figure that out along the way. But I don't want to live under a pile of clutter. I don't want to be I used to be a terrible online shopper. I mean, it was out of control. And now I just don't, I have to really want something, or it has to have a very clear need in my life for me to buy it. So just all those things, just being super picky about relationships, about purchases, about what I put in my mouth, what I read, who I interact with, and, just honoring myself, now that I know myself so much better, that I don't, you can't get time back. So I'm not going to spend it foolishly anymore. I spent a lot of years spending it foolishly.
That sense of mortality is definitely very real. I remember my dad telling me at one point that he had kind of calculated out the number of times that he would see me again, just based on, how often we visit and number of years realistically left. And yeah, it's just, man, that's a hard thought. And because it wasn't that big of a number. And you hit this point where you start going, well, how much more time do I have left to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is? And there is kind of a sense of urgency, or at least some weight to it. And so I like how you're playing, just being very conscious about kind of what are you doing with that time, right. Not in a panicked way, but just, hey, it's fine. Let's get the most out of it that we can, and keep the focus where it needs to be. Well, what advice do you have for others who are also kind of looking at their life going, wow, I try to make change. I wish I could make a change. I want to make a change. I mean, you already gave a little bit of advice around, hey, do a 30-day experiment, but kind of what other advice would you have for folks?
To just figure out what it is. And for a long time, I had this like feeling, and it was in my gut, and it would kind of come from out of nowhere. And it was just sort of this, it was just, I have such a hard time articulating it, but just this bad gut feeling, and it wouldn't last very long. And I would even try to conjure it up a little bit so I could kind of get the feeling of like, what is this? And it wasn't really related to anything. And it wouldn't happen at a certain time or after a certain experience or anything. It was just kind of out of nowhere. And it might sound kind of woo-woo, but I think it was just this inner voice telling me like, hey, what are you doing? Like, straighten your life out. It's time. You're not going to live to be 1,000 years old. I mean, like, now's the time. And since I've made these changes, I don't have that. But I think listening to whatever you're telling yourself that you need, like, hey, maybe you're eating a little too much fast food and you need to knock that off. Or, maybe it's time to give up the cigarettes, or, whatever it is, just identify that. And I didn't tackle everything at once. It was the alcohol first. And, if I had to go back and pick the one that was the most important, it was that one. And so I'm glad I did it first. I learned the most there. And So I would say, I mean, maybe some people would say start with something easy, but I think it's whatever is causing you the most pain and the most number of burdens. That's the one you need to try and work on. Just try it for 30 days. And, it's someone who has this very serious alcohol problem cannot just quit. And, they need professional detox kind of stuff. And I don't know about that. But I think for most things, giving up fast food or giving up red meat, you're going to be fine. And if after 30 days you hate your life without those things, then it's time to reevaluate. But and then don't let all those other people get you off track. It's hard. Other people will have opinions about what you're doing. And just, suffer through it and remember that you're not doing that. What you're doing is not for them. It's for you. And you're the most important when it comes to this. And so just try to understand where they're coming from and just move on and just try to, I always say, it's like when you're in school and you're taking a test and you put your head down and you just concentrate on your test and it's the same kind of thing. I just kind of put my head down and I just focus on what's in front of me. What are the tasks I need to do in order to get where I want to be, and block out the noise.
With that thought, where can people find more about you?
So I'm on Instagram at Adrienne Shubin, Shubin, Adrienne_Shubin. And then I have a blog and the link is there. It's called The Rich Life After 50. And so I started the blog last spring and then I took a break while we were traveling and now I'm back to it. So I'm excited. I have lots of things in mind to write about in the new year. But yeah, I'm most active I do have a Facebook page, but I don't really go there very much. So mostly Instagram and my blog.
All right. Well, and speaking of the new year, as we wrap up, what are you most excited about? What you see on the horizon for yourself in this upcoming year?
I have funny things on my list this year. Like I want to do the splits. So how weird is that? There's just like all these little things that I always wanted to do when I was a kid and I didn't, or a teenager, and I didn't do them. I'm taking French lessons and I'm trying really hard to concentrate on that and give some of my time to that every day. And then I want to write more on my blog and develop that more and really just give it more. Try to be like I tell other people to be audacious. I want to be audacious. I want to take risks and put myself out there and be vulnerable and see what I can make of it. See what I don't need to have a ton of followers. I don't need to, I'm not going to pay to have things advertised. And I just wanted to get it out there to, even if it's to 5 people, just to listen and see if they can take any little nugget away that it helps them improve their lives. That would just thrill me.
Excellent. And I know you've already, from the recently kind of chronicled everything that we've been talking about. So great place for people if they want to go a little deeper, get some more insight, maybe on some of the things we didn't touch on. And so also be excited to see where this goes for you in the new year.
Thank you. Well, this has been a lot of fun.